Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a quiet European field at dawn. Mist drifts low, clinging to the cold earth. Not a single engine, not a single boot, not a single whisper breaks the stillness. You feel as if time itself is holding its breath. And then, without warning, the horizon erupts. Metal thunder, engines screaming. Columns of armored beasts burst from the fog like something torn out of another world. Infantry surge behind them, fast, relentless, coordinated with terrifying precision. You blink once and a defensive line that was solid minutes ago is already folding. Blink again, and it's gone. How does an entire front collapse before soldiers even understand what's happening? How can speed, planning, and shock tear apart armies that once seemed immovable? This is not chaos. This is not improvisation. This is Blitzkrieg, lightning war. A method so sharp, so sudden, so overwhelming that it shattered assumptions about how wars were supposed to be fought. And if you think you know the story, think again. Because Blitzkrieg is not what many imagine. It's faster, colder, more calculated, and far more complex than a simple armored charge. Welcome, history warriors. I'm Knightley. You're about to witness history like never before. And this is just the beginning, because the storm that's coming will redefine modern warfare. War context. To understand Blitzkrieg, we must step back into Europe on the eve of its eruption. The late 1930s were a continent trembling on fractured ground. Nations were rebuilding, rearming, recalculating. Memories of the First World War trenches, stalemates, years of grinding attrition, still weighed heavily on generals and governments alike. Most armies prepared to fight the next war the same way they fought the last one. Slow mobilization, fortified lines, and the belief that defense, not offense, would decide their fate. Across the map, alliances shifted uneasily, diplomacy frayed, and borders vibrated with suspicion. Everyone sensed conflict coming. No one knew how fast it would arrive. Blitzkrieg would strike in a world expecting another drawn-out struggle and shatter those expectations within days. The stage was set, the pieces aligned, and Europe braced for a storm far faster than anything its planners had imagined. The question now, who would be ready when the lightning hit? The first true displays of Blitzkrieg unfolded in Poland in 1939, though the roots stretched deeper. Germany, seeking rapid territorial expansion, aimed to avoid the long, draining conflicts that had crippled nations in the previous war. Opposing them were forces that believed in defensive depth and time to mobilize, time to reinforce, time to adapt. But Blitzkrieg was designed to deny that time entirely. Striking with combined arms armor, infantry, aircraft orchestrated into one unbroken thrust, it overwhelmed opponents before they could even complete their first coordinated response. Neighboring nations watched in disbelief as front lines crumbled in days, not months. Europe's balance of power was shifting in real time, and each breakthrough sent tremors across every diplomatic table. As Germany's ambitions grew, so too did the fear that this new style of warfare might spread across the continent like a spark in dry grass. And still few truly understood what they were witnessing. Blitzkrieg's rise unfolded against a broader global tension. Uncertainty in leadership, economic strain, and fractured alliances. Nations were cautious, nervous, and often divided internally about how far they should prepare for conflict. Many underestimated the importance of speed, coordination, and mechanization. Others clung to static defenses, convinced that fortifications and numbers would protect them. The world was bracing for another slow, grinding war. What it got instead was a whirlwind one that would tear across borders, disrupt long-held doctrines, and force every army to rethink its identity. The calm before the chaos was thinning. Strategic build-up. Before Blitzkrieg erupted across Europe, it existed first as an idea half-formed, debated, doubted. Its creators did not begin with tanks rolling and aircraft diving. They began with frustration. The First World War had shown them everything they never wanted to repeat. Endless trenches, immovable fronts, and years of attrition that drained nations to the bone. To them, the next war had to be different, fast, sharp, decisive. The German High Command sought a method that would prevent another multi-year stalemate. Their rising generation of officers studied mobility like a religion, believing victory belonged not to the strongest army, but the one that could strike first, hardest, and deepest. This was the seed. It had not yet taken its final shape, but the direction was clear. Speed over mass, disruption over destruction, tempo over brutality. Every nation prepared for conflict, but only one was shaping an entirely new vocabulary for how war would be fought. And the world did not yet see what was coming. Across the border, other nations were preparing too, but their preparations looked backward, not forward. France believed safety lay in fortifications, pouring resources into the Maginot Line, a masterpiece of concrete and steel meant to block any direct invasion. Britain focused on naval power, global commitments, and gradual rearmament. Poland, caught between adversarial neighbors, strengthened its cavalry and scattered defensive lines, convinced geography and resilience would buy time in war's earliest days. These nations were not blind. They were experienced, cautious, aware of the tensions rising across Europe. What they lacked was a unified anticipation of the war to come. Most expected a slow, measured build-up mobilization first, action later. But Blitzkrieg aimed to obliterate the space between those two phases entirely. To armies still rooted in the rhythms of the previous war, that made all the difference. Their strategies were strong on paper, effective in theory. Yet theory collapses when the enemy refuses to fight the way you prepared for. The mismatch was widening, and it would soon become fatal. At the heart of Blitzkrieg were the commanders who believed in it. Heinz Guderian, sharp-minded, impatient with tradition, pushed for armored units to be massed, not scattered. He saw tanks as the spear point, not support. Erich von Manstein, methodical, cold, brilliant at operational creativity, imagined sweeping maneuvers that reshaped front lines like strokes on a map. These men were not caricatures of bold warriors. They were planners obsessed with timing, sequencing, and coordination. To them, a perfect operation was a symphony, armor forcing breakthroughs, motorized infantry pouring through the gaps, aircraft paralyzing enemy communications, and field commanders making decisions at speed. Their personalities differed, but their belief aligned. Mobility must replace stagnation. Their methods shocked older generals who still trusted slow movement, dispersed armor, and rigid orders. But the new thinkers insisted war had changed, and they would prove it. Every meeting, every argument, every blueprint pushed Blitzkrieg closer to reality. Weapons alone did not create Blitzkrieg, but they made it possible. Tanks like the Panzer I were modest machines, lightly armored, lightly armed, outmatched individually by many foreign designs. Yet Blitzkrieg did not rely on one tank's strength. It relied on hundreds moving as one, communicating, maneuvering, exploiting speed over armor. Aircraft such as the Ju-87 Stuka were slow and vulnerable compared to fighters, yet their precision dive bombing terrified defenders and shattered key positions at the exact moment ground forces surged forward. Radios, simple, compact, revolutionary, were the true backbone. In an age when many armies still relied on runners or field telephones, German units could coordinate instantly. Orders traveled not in minutes or hours, but seconds. With radios in nearly every tank, commanders could adapt mid-movement, shift thrusts, reinforce success, avoid delays. Technology here was not superior, it was synchronized, and synchronization became a weapon in itself. Logistics, often ignored in cinematic tales, were central to Blitzkrieg's viability. Fast-moving armor meant nothing without fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and towed equipment arriving at the same relentless pace. German planners built supply systems to chase the front rather than labor behind it. Motorized convoys carried what foot soldiers once hauled on their backs. Engineers followed close behind to repair bridges, clear roads, and keep the spearhead from slowing. This support network was not glamorous, but it allowed the armored thrust to behave like a blade sliding through an enemy's depth. Without this machinery of movement, Blitzkrieg would have sputtered after its first breakthrough. What mattered wasn't just breaking the front line, it was sustaining the advance beyond it. The opposing forces, meanwhile, prepared for a different kind of conflict. Many armies distributed their tanks among infantry divisions, believing armor should support foot soldiers at close range. Their aircraft were often reserved for defensive interception, not coordinated ground attack. Their communications depended on rigid hierarchies. Orders moved slowly, updates even slower. They valued caution, discipline, and careful sequencing. These principles were not wrong. They simply belonged to another era of warfare. The great defensive lines that nations trusted were designed to stop frontal assaults, not bypassing penetrations. Their reserves were positioned for predictable battles, not for sudden collapses. Their commanders expected an initial clash, a pause, and then the long grind. Blitzkrieg allowed no pauses. The gulf between preparation and reality was widening with every passing month. As 1939 approached, decision-makers across Europe felt a rising pressure. Intelligence reports warned of growing German mechanization. Military attachés observed large-scale exercises emphasizing speed and coordination. Reconnaissance flights noted massing armor formations. Yet many still dismissed Blitzkrieg as propaganda, a bluff, a show, a modernized cavalry charge dressed in new metal. They believed the deeper layers of defense would hold. They believed no army could coordinate tanks, planes, and infantry at the speed German planners claimed. They believed geography, fortifications, and resilience would buy all the time needed. Belief would not survive first contact. Inside German command posts, the mood was markedly different. Planning sessions grew intense, precise, relentless. Maps covered entire walls, marked with arrows showing converging thrusts, anticipated choke points, logistics corridors, air support patterns. Staff officers drilled planning cycles repeatedly, walking through each phase until reactions became instinct. Crucially, the emerging doctrine emphasized initiative. Junior officers were encouraged to act independently when opportunities appeared, rather than waiting for permission. This flexibility turned every unit into a potential spark, capable of igniting deeper breakthroughs. It was a philosophy that rewarded speed of thought as much as speed of movement. Blitzkrieg wasn't simply a strategy, it was a mentality. And once put into motion, it would be like releasing a force that could not easily be slowed. Europe's diplomatic landscape added yet another layer of tension. Treaties strained, promises blurred. Leaders struggled to predict the future as alliances shifted like tides. The anxiety of uncertainty pushed nations simultaneously toward caution and confrontation. Some hoped appeasement would delay conflict. Others believed standing firm would prevent collapse. In this environment, Blitzkrieg gained a psychological edge even before the first engine roared. It thrived on hesitation, on political delays, on the reluctance of nations to commit fully to mobilization. The faster Germany prepared for war, the more slowly its rivals responded. That asymmetry time itself became part of the strategy. The fuse was nearly burned to its end. By late 1939, the German High Command had refined their core operational sequence: identify the weakest point in a defensive line, smash through it with concentrated armored force, widen the gap through relentless pressure, flood motorized infantry behind the spearhead, and disrupt enemy command structures by striking deep, not wide. Instead of attacking evenly across an entire front, Blitzkrieg centered on creating a single point of collapse, then turning that collapse into a chain reaction. This required precision, timing, and unbroken momentum. Every day stalled, every hour lost, threatened to unravel the rhythm. That urgency created a tempo unlike anything Europe had seen. The strategy did not depend on overwhelming strength. It depended on being first, faster, and endlessly forward. Germany was ready to test the theory on a real battlefield. For the soldiers who would carry out these plans, the build-up was electric. Training intensified, emphasizing quick mounting and dismounting, rapid road marches, and immediate formation changes. Tank crews drilled turret rotation, communication procedures, and emergency repairs. Motorized infantry practiced jumping from trucks directly into assault positions. Air crews rehearsed dive sequences, target marking, and close air support timing until every movement became automatic. The entire force learned to move with a single principle: never stop. Momentum was survival. Momentum was power. The sense of anticipation spread through the ranks. They were not preparing to hold ground. They were preparing to seize it at speed. The tension coiled tighter. Yet even within the German command, doubts existed. Could the tanks withstand sustained combat? Would the aircraft arrive at the right moment? Could the logistics keep up? And what if the enemy adapted quickly? These worries were real, But the planners believed the risks were worth it. Traditional warfare favored larger nations with deeper reserves. Blitzkrieg, by contrast, favored initiative and disruption qualities Germany sought to weaponize. If successful, Blitzkrieg could neutralize larger opponents before their full strength came into play. If it failed, the consequences would be disastrous. There would be no slow fallback, no gradual recalibration. The speed that made Blitzkrieg dangerous also made it unforgiving. Still, the gamble had already been made. Plans were in motion, armies were moving. Across Europe, civilians sensed the atmosphere tightening. Railways grew crowded with troop transports. Cities buzzed with rumors. Governments issued cautious broadcasts urging calm. Children heard whispers behind closed doors. Merchants watched supplies shrink. Newspapers printed headlines that sounded increasingly like warnings. The continent awaited something, though no one agreed on what shape it would take. For many, the assumption was simple. If war came, it would repeat the patterns of the past. A slow march, a long build-up, a familiar tragedy. They were wrong. The tragedy that approached would arrive not slowly but all at once. Poland became the first real test of Blitzkrieg's maturation. German planners crafted a strategy involving simultaneous thrusts from multiple directions, converging toward key cities and communication hubs. The goal was not the destruction of Poland's army in head-on battles. It was the collapse of its ability to coordinate, disrupt the command system, isolate units, force retreats, overwhelm decision-making. The entire campaign aimed to end before reinforcements or foreign intervention could arrive. This emphasis on operational speed revealed Blitzkrieg's deeper essence. It was less about overpowering the enemy's strength and more about annihilating their time. Once time was gone, everything else unraveled, and so the final preparations began. By now, every piece of the Blitzkrieg machine stood in place. Commanders had their directives, divisions had their objectives, supply routes were mapped, air corridors planned, radio networks tested. The armored spearheads positioned themselves like coiled steel serpents waiting for release. In command posts, officers stared at their watches, counting down the final hours. The tension hung heavy, almost physical, as if the air itself knew what was coming. This was the last moment before motion, before engines ignited, before divisions surged forward, before Europe felt the shock of lightning war for the first time. One spark, one order, and the storm would break. Silence before the storm. Battle begins. Dawn breaks like a blade tearing the sky. A thin, cold light spreads across the frontier, brushing the outlines of tanks crouched in the mist. Engines rumble one by one, sending tremors through the earth. Crews settle into steel shells, adjusting dials, checking optics, waiting for the single command that will end the world they know and begin another. Officers stare at their watches, seconds stretching like wire pulled tight. The Polish countryside lies quiet, unaware that this morning will echo across history. Then, without warning, the silence fractures. Radios crackle, orders snap through the ether. Advance! Tracks bite into the soil. Columns lurch forward. Dust rises like ghosts shaken awake. Blitzkrieg isn't coming. It has already begun. And with that first surge, Europe enters an age of speed and shock no one imagined possible. Momentum becomes the new law of war, and the spear point is now in motion, leading us toward the first collision. The armored spearheads stretch across the plain like moving shadows. Panzer columns form long metallic rivers, fluid and relentless. Turrets swivel left and right, scanning tree lines for threats. Ahead of them, reconnaissance units race far beyond the main body, pushing deep into uncertain ground. They are the eyes of the strike, darting through villages, fields, and broken roads to find paths that tanks can exploit. Behind them, artillery prepares to speak. Guns thud, sending shockwaves across the frontier as high-explosive shells crash into border positions. Telephone poles shiver, forests tremble. Defensive bunkers erupt in plumes of dust. The opening barrage does not aim to destroy everything. It aims to disorient, break rhythm, and punch holes in awareness. And just as defenders scramble to react, the real hammer fall begins. A screech rips through the air. Something dives from above. The Stukas have arrived, and with them the battlefield tilts. The Stukas descend like steel arrows. Their sirens howl as they dive, a mechanical scream tearing through nerves long before the bombs hit. Pilots hold the angle until the last possible moment, then pull up sharply as explosions blossom below. Roads vanish under ripped earth, bridges shatter, communication posts fling debris into the sky. To defenders on the ground, the attack feels less like bombing and more like the sky itself collapsing. Units attempt to reposition, but coordination fractures instantly. Runners can't reach command posts. Field radios snap with static. Commanders receive only fragments of reports, some outdated, some contradictory, some cut off mid-sentence. Into this confusion, the tanks push harder. Every moment the enemy struggles to react is a moment Blitzkrieg widens the breach. Down the road still intact, columns of armor accelerate, engines growling louder with each kilometer. The first defensive line is cracking, and the real battle hasn't even started. Ahead lies a deeper resistance, and the panzers are heading straight for it. Polish defenders rush to man their positions as the armored wave approaches. Anti-tank guns swivel into place. Cavalry units reposition at speed, riding across open ground to plug gaps. Infantry scramble into trenches, loading rifles and machine guns while shouting orders over the thunder of artillery. They know what's coming. The ground quakes. Out of the dust, the panzers burst forward, lean, angular, determined. The first shots crack like splitting timber. Armor-piercing rounds streak toward the tanks, striking sparks off steel hulls. Some machines lurch to a halt, tracks damaged, engines hissing. Crewmen react instantly, coordinating through headsets, adjusting formations, maintaining speed. The defenders fight hard, buying seconds with grit and precision. But Blitzkrieg is not a single thrust. It is pressure from every direction. Machine gun fire sweeps the fields. Mortars fall behind the lines. Recon units flank the position, probing weaknesses. The defenders hold until the Stukas dive again. The second strike seals the fate of the forward line, and the panzers roll through the breach like rushing water seeking the lowest ground. Behind the initial clash, the real engine of Blitzkrieg surges forward. Motorized infantry. Trucks roar down narrow roads, bouncing over potholes, moving at a pace that leaves marching armies in another century. Soldiers leap out the moment vehicles halt, spreading across hedgerows, clearing pockets of resistance, pushing deeper into territory thought safe minutes earlier. Their role is clear. Clear the path, widen the gap, secure the flanks, keep the momentum alive. Every house, every road intersection, every tree line becomes a checkpoint in a race no defender can match. Meanwhile, officers hover over unfolding maps. Arrows once just ink on paper now represent living motion. Reports flow in faster than they can be processed. Screens light up with updated coordinates. The advance is going better than expected, but with speed comes risk. If supply lines fail, the spearhead could stall. If flanks collapse, the forward tanks could be trapped. If resistance stiffens unexpectedly, the entire tempo could break. But none of that matters now. The armored columns press ahead, hungry for the next objective. The panzers reach a river crossing, a natural choke point. Every instinct says slow down, but Blitzkrieg demands the opposite: accelerate, surprise, overwhelm. Engineers rush forward, assessing the bridge. It's damaged, but standing. The risk is enormous. Send tanks across and the whole line could collapse if the structure fails. But hesitation is death to tempo. The lead tank commander radios a single word: crossing. The first panzer climbs onto the bridge. Metal groans. Wooden beams shudder. The river rushes below like a dark warning. Halfway across, enemy artillery opens fire. Shells explode around the structure, throwing water high into the air. One round lands close enough to rock the tank sideways. Still, it moves. More panzers follow, one after another, turning the bridge into a vibrating, groaning lifeline of steel. On the far bank, infantry scramble to establish a defensive perimeter. Machine guns snap into action, mortars thud. The crossing becomes a heartbeat of pure tension. But the gamble pays off. The spearhead is across and the defenders now face an enemy where they didn't expect one for hours. A more brutal test lies ahead. On the northern flank, resistance stiffens. Polish units dig in on high ground overlooking the plains. Their artillery is well positioned, their observation posts clear, their communication line intact. As the panzers approach, the defenders unleash a barrage that forces the spearhead to halt for the first time. Shells burst around the tanks, showering earth and metal fragments. Armor columns zigzag violently, trying to avoid becoming predictable targets. Commanders realize this cannot be solved with sheer momentum. They need precision. The call goes out. Within minutes, Stukas once again slice through the clouds. They dive toward the ridgeline, bombing artillery nests with terrifying accuracy. The defenders fire back, but they cannot silence the sky. As the barrage weakens, the tanks advance again, up the slope, toward the guns, toward the defenders who refuse to retreat. The clash at the ridgeline becomes a test of will, slow, grinding, desperate. But Blitzkrieg is relentless, and the defenders are about to feel the next layer of pressure: encirclement. Encirclement is Blitzkrieg's signature move, more psychological than physical, more devastating than a frontal assault. While the defenders fight uphill, a second column of panzers sweeps around the flank, appearing suddenly at their rear. Motorized infantry fan out, cutting off escape roads, ambushing convoys, blocking retreat routes. One moment, the defenders feel in control. The next, they realize they are surrounded. Radio transmissions grow frantic. Units request permission to pull back. Others report isolation, some simply go silent. Pressed from multiple sides, the defenders attempt a breakout, charging down a narrow forest road only, to collide with another German formation racing forward. Confusion spins into panic. Vehicles crash into each other trying to reverse. Machine gun fire rips through the tree line. What had been an organized defensive line dissolves in minutes. Commanders know the position cannot be held. They order a retreat, not orderly, not phased, but immediate. But Blitzkrieg does not allow breathing room. Already the next objective is being marked on the maps. The momentum builds unstoppable, pulling the battlefield toward the next crescendo. As the spearhead pushes deeper, the landscape shifts. Forests give way to rolling farmland. Villages dot the horizon, some deserted, some bracing for impact. Tanks crush fences, tear through orchards, and roll across open fields as if geography itself is bending out of their way. Civilians flee in carts, cars, and on foot, moving in the opposite direction, away from the thunder. The panzers pass them without slowing, engines growling with mechanical indifference. Up ahead, reconnaissance reports a major defensive line forming around a key crossroads. The Polish forces intend to make a stand here, using the natural bottleneck to stop the push. German commanders analyze the map. They see a trap, narrow streets that limit tank maneuverability, hidden anti-tank guns, potential ambush positions. A direct assault would be deadly. Instead, they choose to strike from multiple sides at once, frontal pressure, masking a swift swing through nearby fields. The defenders think they face one threat. They're about to face three. The crossroads becomes the next battleground. The assault begins with smoke-thick, choking, disorienting. Artillery lays down a curtain that blinds the defenders and hides the approaching infantry. German squads crawl forward through ditches and broken walls, weapons ready, senses sharp. Tanks advance slowly, turrets scanning rooftops and windows. The defenders open fire first. Machine guns rip through the smoke, forcing the infantry flat. Anti-tank rounds slam into the lead panzer, knocking it immobilized. But this is only the distraction. To the west, the flanking force bursts from the tree line. Tanks race toward the crossroads from an unexpected angle, catching defenders mid-reposition. To the east, motorized infantry launch a sudden assault on an old farmhouse guarding the road. The defenders realize too late. They are being squeezed like a vice. Under crushing pressure, the line collapses segment by segment. Within an hour, the crossroads falls. The road ahead is open, but victory comes with a warning. Supply lines are stretching thin, and speed is beginning to outrun sustainability. Still, the advance cannot stop, because the window for collapse is brief, and the next target is even more critical. The next objective is a fortified town. Its streets narrow, buildings tall, and every corner a potential trap. Intelligence reports indicate pockets of resistance, barricades, and hidden artillery. For German commanders, speed remains paramount. The tanks form the spearhead, moving through open approaches while infantry infiltrates alleys to clear snipers. Recon units scout side streets, marking hazards, guiding the advance. Artillery positions fire intermittently, targeting crossroads and supply depots, while Stukas hover above, ready to dive at first sight of resistance. Inside the town, defenders brace, loading magazines, checking weapons, and shouting orders over the chaos. The first tank rounds crash into barricades, splinters fly, the street erupts into smoke and dust. Yet each advance is coordinated, every movement calculated. Momentum becomes a living force, swallowing obstacles and driving units forward. By mid-morning, the town begins to crumble, not from destruction alone, but from the constant pressure, the relentless movement, the psychological weight of being unable to regroup. The defenders realize they cannot hold indefinitely. The panzers roll onward, and the next village lies just beyond the river waiting for the surge. Crossing rivers is always a gamble. Bridges may be destroyed, fords unstable, and every moment spent in choke points is an opportunity for counterattack. Yet German engineers are trained for this. Pontoon bridges are deployed within hours. Explosives clear rubble. Infantry wade through shallow sections, providing cover for advancing armor. The first tanks cross, engines growling over the water. The lead commander scans the far bank, noting the positions of enemy machine guns and field artillery. Every shot fired is met with rapid suppression by mortars and Stukas overhead. Civilians peek through shattered windows or flee along dirt roads, adding a human element to the advancing tide. Polish defenders attempt to regroup on higher ground beyond the river, deploying every available gun to cover potential crossing points. The Germans push through the initial fire. Tanks stagger, but engineers repair quickly, allowing the columns to surge forward again. By nightfall, the river crossing is secured. The defenders' time to react is shrinking rapidly. The battlefield is no longer static. It is a moving river of steel, engines, and determination heading for the next key objective. As night descends, the battlefield shifts. Shadows lengthen, and smoke mingles with the evening mist. Yet Blitzkrieg does not pause. Tanks maintain their pace, headlights cutting through fog and smoke. Infantry move silently between buildings, checking for remaining resistance, securing supply routes, and preparing for the next day's advance. Commanders work under dim lights, plotting the next thrust, analyzing reports, and ensuring communications remain intact. Enemy units that survive the initial assault regroup wherever possible, attempting to slow the German momentum with ambushes and hit-and-run tactics. But every attempt is met with overwhelming coordination. Artillery suppresses, Stukas terrorize, tanks punch through choke points, and motorized infantry encircle, leaving defenders few options. The night becomes a corridor of movement, with supply trucks racing to keep pace with the spearhead, repairing roads, refueling vehicles, and ensuring the advance does not stall. By the early hours, German units have secured the town, the river, and the approaches beyond. The initial chaos has been converted into controlled, relentless motion. Tomorrow, the next objective promises even more resistance and a test of endurance for both attackers and defenders. Dawn reveals the next line of defense, a forested ridge. Polish units occupy high ground, fortified with anti-tank guns and machine gun nests. Trees offer natural cover and concealment. German reconnaissance identifies potential routes through the woods, but each path carries risk. Mines, hidden gunners, and obstacles could delay the advance. The decision is swift, simultaneous assaults from multiple directions, coordinated by radio. Tanks hammer through forest edges where clearings allow, while infantry infiltrates from concealed trails. Stukas buzz overhead, diving at suspected artillery positions. Explosions rock the ridge, sending birds scattering and filling the air with smoke and dust. Defenders fire back with determination. Their artillery rattles trees, machine gun bursts punctuate the thunder, but the momentum is unbroken. Communication remains key. Commanders direct the assault like conductors of a symphony, adjusting positions, reinforcing successes, bypassing stubborn pockets of resistance. By midday, the ridge is breached. The defenders withdraw under pressure, leaving artillery, weapons, and supplies behind. The path opens to the next objective, a town critical for supply and communication. The advance continues, a relentless surge of mechanized force, pushing the front deeper into enemy territory. By now, the battlefield is a blur. Tanks crush hedgerows and roads, Infantry fan out through fields and villages, artillery pounds continuously, and Stukas scream overhead, coordinating with ground units with clockwork precision. Every advance is calculated yet fluid. Any disruption is immediately corrected. Units adjust mid-battle, exploiting weaknesses, reinforcing breakthroughs, and isolating enemy positions. Defenders fight fiercely, but the sheer speed and coordination are overwhelming. Resistance pockets collapse under the psychological weight of being outmaneuvered at every turn. Even experienced commanders struggle to issue coherent orders as the front fractures. Orders to retreat collide with incoming flanking units. Supply lines stretch thin, forcing rapid improvisation. Yet German units maintain tempo, using every innovation in mobility, communication, and coordination to sustain the assault. The initial calm of the morning is gone, replaced by a pulsating rhythm of attack, suppression, and encirclement. Each passing hour compounds the defenders' losses, territorial, material, and morale. The momentum is unstoppable, carrying the panzers and infantry ever closer to the next critical stronghold. A fortified village sits in the path, narrow streets lined with buildings ready to channel defenders' fire. Here the battle becomes a maze. Tanks struggle to maneuver, infantry moves street to street, and the air fills with dust, smoke, and shouts. Defenders use the urban terrain skillfully, firing from windows, barricading streets, and attempting to trap vehicles. But Blitzkrieg adapts instantly. Engineers clear obstacles while infantry neutralizes snipers. Tanks coordinate to suppress threats, providing mobile cover for advancing squads. Every action is synchronized. Artillery hits suspected strong points, Stukas hammer escape routes, and flanking units close in from behind. The village falls slowly but inevitably. Streets littered with abandoned supplies signal retreat. The defenders' time is running out. The Germans anticipate every move, forcing withdrawal under pressure rather than allowing orderly defense. Momentum carries them through the ruins, pushing toward the next target, a larger town, critical to supply and command continuity. The battle rages on, relentless, unyielding, precise in its chaos. Victory is measured not in destruction alone, but in the unbroken tempo that leaves the enemy struggling to regain composure. Beyond the village, open plains stretch for kilometers, deceptively calm but bristling with danger. Polish forces attempt to regroup, moving artillery, organizing reserves, and preparing counterattacks. The German advance does not hesitate. Panzers surge forward in tight formations, their tracks tearing into soil, engines roaring like a single living creature. Infantry follows rapidly, securing flanks and eliminating isolated resistance. Above Stuka's circle, seeking targets of opportunity. A dive bomb hits a command post, scattering officers and disrupting coordination. Another bomb destroys a road bridge, forcing defenders to reroute under constant pressure. The pace is exhausting, yet every hour favors the attackers. Defenders' morale frays under relentless assault, while German units maintain cohesion through discipline, training, and communication. Momentum is no longer a concept. It is the battlefield itself, flowing around obstacles, enveloping resistance, and dictating the rhythm of every engagement. The enemy's next line is not far trenches, fortified positions, and towns that might finally slow the relentless tide. But the Germans have one weapon left, speed itself, and speed will decide the next clash. The defenders attempt to anchor themselves at a small hill overlooking a vital crossroads. Anti-tank guns are dug in, machine guns cover the approaches, and field artillery lines the slope. The first tanks reach the base, their turrets rotate, scanning for threats. Engineers clear mines with practiced efficiency, while infantry advances under cover, securing nearby buildings to prevent flanking attacks. The defenders fire with accuracy, knocking out a tank and slowing another. But this is precisely the point. As one line falters, another force pivots, envelops, and presses the attack. Stukas arrive, dive-bombing artillery positions, forcing defenders to abandon strong points. Smoke and explosions cloak the advance, masking the movement of German units through side paths and fields. The hill becomes a contested arena. Engagements flare, ebb, and surge with rapid shifts in momentum. Time is the enemy. Hesitation proves deadly. Within hours, the hill falls and the Germans push forward, opening the road to the next town. Each victory is swift but costly in effort and coordination. The battlefield pulses with energy, movement, and tension, every second a test of discipline, speed, and nerve. The next town is larger, with fortified streets, stone buildings, and entrenched defenders ready to make a stand. Civilians watch from windows, clutching belongings, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. German command divides the town into sectors for simultaneous assault. Tanks advance along main roads, while infantry infiltrates side streets. Engineers clear barricades and repair crushed bridges, maintaining the tempo that defines Blitzkrieg. Defenders resist with everything they have. Gunfire from windows, Molotovs, and anti-tank positions. For a moment, the advance halts as armored units adjust to the unexpected obstacles. A Stuka dive bombs a key intersection, providing cover for infantry and breaking the defenders' rhythm. Machine guns rattle from alleys, but flanking units quickly neutralize the threat. The coordination is seamless. Every push is synchronized, every retreat anticipated, every obstacle incorporated into the plan. By nightfall, the town is captured, roads cleared, communication lines disrupted, and resistance scattered. Momentum remains unbroken. The front line moves further, deeper, faster, leaving defenders struggling to consolidate any defensive effort. And yet, the war is far from over. The next challenge, larger forces, stronger fortifications, awaits at the horizon. The advancing columns now confront a river valley, naturally defended by its steep banks and dense forests. Observation posts track every movement, artillery prepared to punish exposed forces. The Germans cannot slow. Every pause threatens the operational rhythm. Engineers rush forward, constructing temporary bridges while reconnaissance scouts locate viable crossings. Tanks and infantry surge across fordable sections, taking calculated risks. Anti-tank teams attempt to halt the advance, but are met with precision fire, rapid flanking maneuvers, and air suppression from Stukas overhead. Crossing the river becomes a synchronized operation. Each element, armor, infantry, artillery, engineers, air support, moves in concert. Defenders' attempts at counterattacks are limited by the speed and coordination of the assault. Pockets of resistance are quickly isolated and neutralized. By midday, the valley is under German control, roads cleared, and supply lines extended. Every victory extends the reach of the Blitzkrieg machine, widening the front and stretching defenders thinner with each engagement. The pace leaves little room for planning or cohesion on the opposing side. What remains for them is a continuous reaction to a force they cannot predict, cannot stop, and cannot outrun. The battle now shifts to a series of villages aligned along the next highway. Each one offers defensive potential, narrow streets, stone buildings, fortified positions. German units divide and conquer. Tanks provide covering fire, artillery suppresses positions, and infantry infiltrates buildings. Flanking units move around the periphery to cut off escape routes. Defenders attempt coordinated counterattacks, but German communication allows rapid adaptation. Tanks reposition, engineers clear mines, and reserves plug gaps instantly. Stukas dive repeatedly, their sirens splitting the air as they strike artillery emplacements and block reinforcement routes. The villages fall sequentially. Momentum carries the German advance without pause, every success amplifying pressure on the next line of defense. Civilians flee, soldiers retreat, and territory changes hands within hours. The front line becomes less a defensive barrier and more a memory, a continuously moving tableau of pressure, encirclement, and tactical mastery. With each engagement, the velocity of Blitzkrieg compounds. Defenders are forced to react rather than act, a critical advantage in the German operational design. And ahead, a major crossroads city looms, the next test of speed, coordination, and nerve. The crossroads city is vital for supply and communication. Its loss would fracture defensive cohesion across the entire region. Tanks roll onto the outskirts, engines humming like predators. Infantry fans out, taking cover behind walls, trees, and vehicles. Engineers prepare paths through rubble and barricades. Defenders concentrate artillery on main approaches, hoping to slow the advance. Anti-tank guns rake the streets, knocking out several panzers. But simultaneous flanking attacks bypass their focus. Motorized infantry infiltrates backstreets and buildings, isolating units. Stukas dive with surgical precision, targeting command posts and supply depots. The city becomes a battlefield of layered chaos, streets alive with movement, smoke and dust filling the air, explosions punctuating every moment. Yet the German advance remains coordinated. Defenders struggle to communicate and maneuver. Panic spreads, forcing withdrawals and abandonments. By evening, the city is partially under German control, key intersections seized and escape routes cut. The velocity of the attack ensures that defenders have no respite, no time to regroup. The front line surges onward, ever closer to strategic objectives. Blitzkrieg, once theoretical, is now an unstoppable current across the landscape. Beyond the crossroads, German units push into a series of ridges and farmland, encountering pockets of stubborn resistance. Anti-tank guns rise from hedgerows, machine guns snap from hidden positions, and artillery rains down sporadically. The panzers adjust formation, moving in wedges to avoid concentrated fire. Infantry advances alongside, clearing farmhouses and orchards. Engineers follow closely, removing obstacles and maintaining the path of the spearhead. The defenders attempt counterattacks, but coordination fails under constant pressure. Flanking forces encircle isolated units. Stukas strike rapidly, adding terror and confusion. Each engagement is brief, yet intense. Every minute spent slows the enemy, but cannot stop the flow. Momentum is the weapon now, more powerful than armor or artillery. By late afternoon, the ridges are under German control. Roads cleared, defenders scattered, and the advance remains uninterrupted. The front stretches further, deeper into enemy territory. The theater of war is alive with motion, every element moving in precise, coordinated rhythm. Victory is measured in territory, disruption, and speed. Ahead, a fortified town waits, poised to test the limits of Blitzkrieg's relentless pace. The fortified town is ringed with stone walls, barricades, and makeshift defensive positions. Streets are narrow, windows bristling with gun barrels, rooftops manned with snipers. German command splits the force. Tanks form a direct assault. Infantry infiltrates alleys and buildings, and flanking units maneuver to cut off escape. Engineers prepare demolition charges to breach walls and remove barricades. The first tank rumbles onto the main street, followed by another, then another. Machine guns fire from every side. Dust and smoke fill the air as panzers knock down barricades, gunfire echoing from every corner. Stukas dive in synchrony, targeting enemy artillery and command positions. Explosions shake the buildings, sending debris onto the streets below. Defenders attempt to hold intersections, firing relentlessly, but German coordination allows simultaneous pressure from multiple angles. By mid-afternoon, the town is fragmented, key positions captured, supply lines severed, and morale fractured. Every defensive success is short-lived, countered by rapid maneuvering, firepower, or encirclement. The tempo of the advance leaves little room to recover. German forces press on, moving toward the next objective, a strategic junction critical for the regional defense network. The strategic junction is heavily defended. The last major barrier before supply lines and communication hubs are vulnerable. Trenches, barricades, and anti-tank positions line the approach. Artillery is concentrated on open fields, and observation posts track every movement. German units push forward with a mixture of armor, infantry, and artillery. Tanks move in wedges, suppressing positions, while infantry infiltrates buildings and alleyways. Engineers clear paths, repair roads, and maintain momentum. Defenders open fire with precision, knocking out several tanks, but flanking units and rapid reinforcement prevent the line from breaking. Stukas dive repeatedly, disabling key artillery and creating openings for infantry. Communication chaos spreads among defenders while German command adapts continuously. By late afternoon, the junction falls. Supply routes secured, defenders isolated, and the road to the next town lies open. Momentum is unbroken, relentless, and increasingly psychological. The defenders can only react, unable to dictate the pace or location of engagements. Each hour increases the strain, compressing time for planning and recovery. Every advance builds the machine that is blitzkrieg speed, coordination, and ruthless precision converging into unstoppable motion. The next target is a heavily fortified town surrounded by forests and hills. Observers note every German movement. Artillery prepares to strike exposed units, and infantry fortifies streets. German command divides forces into coordinated thrusts. Tanks approach main roads, infantry infiltrates side streets, engineers clear obstacles, and flanking units sweep through forested edges. Stukas patrol the skies, ready to dive at critical points, terrorizing defenders and disrupting reinforcements. The attack begins at dawn. Tanks fire on barricades, infantry clears buildings, and engineers dismantle obstacles. Anti-tank fire rakes the columns, but flanking maneuvers bypass concentrated defenses. Momentum carries forward. Every resistance is met with immediate adjustment. Pockets of defenders are isolated, surrounded, and neutralized. By midday, streets are under partial control, supply lines are disrupted, and defensive cohesion is breaking. The speed and coordination leave little chance for organized withdrawal. Every movement compounds the psychological impact, forcing defenders into constant reaction. The battle becomes a series of cascading events where each breakthrough accelerates the next. The town, though not fully captured, is effectively under German operational control. Ahead lies the final stretch for today's advanced critical high ground that could determine the next phase of the campaign. The high ground rises sharply beyond the town, commanding both roads and approaches to the next region. Defenders concentrate artillery and machine guns on likely avenues of advance. Observation posts track every German movement. German commanders know the terrain is advantageous for defense, but halting is not an option. Speed must be maintained. Tanks approach along tree lines, moving diagonally to minimize exposure. Infantry infiltrates under cover, clearing buildings and securing flank paths. Engineers maintain supply continuity, repairing roads and clearing obstacles. Defenders open fire with concentrated accuracy, but simultaneous flanking pressure, suppression by Stukas, and artillery fire gradually erode their positions. The high ground becomes contested, a tug-of-war across fields, roads, and ridges. Each German advance meets resistance, each withdrawal limited by surrounding units. By late afternoon, the high ground is secured. Defenders retreat in disarray, supply lines disrupted and morale faltering. The panzers and infantry pause only briefly to reorganize. Momentum remains unbroken, carrying forces forward toward the next strategic objective, a regional command hub whose fall could shatter remaining coordinated defense. Blitzkrieg's velocity is relentless, and the defender's ability to adapt is diminishing rapidly. The regional command hub looms ahead, fortified with stone walls, barricades, and entrenched artillery. Its loss would fracture the enemy's defensive network, leaving the surrounding countryside exposed. German commanders orchestrate a final coordinated push. Tanks form a spearhead along the main avenues. Infantry infiltrate side streets and buildings. Engineers clear obstacles and maintain mobility. Flanking units sweep around the perimeter, cutting off escape routes. Stukas dive overhead, their sirens screaming, dropping ordnance on artillery positions and command posts. Smoke and dust obscure the battlefield, masking German maneuvers. Defenders fight desperately, firing from windows and trenches, but coordination fails under relentless pressure. Communication lines are severed, reinforcements cannot reach the front. Every breakthrough compounds the psychological and operational pressure. By late afternoon, the outer defenses are breached. Tanks roll into the town, infantry clears remaining resistance, and supply lines are secured. The hub falls not through sheer destruction alone, but through the unyielding pace and coordination of the Blitzkrieg assault. As the sun dips below the horizon, the battlefield stretches across captured towns, ridges, rivers, and crossroads. Smoke rises from multiple points, dust hangs in the air, and the hum of engines fades into evening. German forces consolidate, preparing for the next phase, while defenders regroup in disarray, their lines fractured, their options limited. Blitzkrieg has proven its speed, precision, and psychological dominance. Silence before the storm. The turning point. Tomorrow, one bold decision will flip the battle, redefining momentum and reshaping the front entirely. The battlefield, once a ribbon of relentless motion, slows for a brief, tense moment. German forces, advancing faster than anyone anticipated, face a sudden challenge: terrain, fatigue, and an unexpected concentration of defenders converging from hidden positions. A bold choice is made. Commanders order a concentrated strike at the enemy's center, even as flanks remain vulnerable. The risk is enormous. One misstep could trap the spearhead in a deadly vice. Officers communicate with clipped precision, radio crackling with commands. Tanks pivot, infantry sweeps side streets, engineers prepare to breach barricades. "Speed is our weapon, coordination our shield," one commander declares, his voice calm amid chaos. The defenders sense opportunity. Reinforcements arrive from nearby lines, artillery focuses on exposed positions, and observation posts relay every movement. A miscalculated maneuver by one German battalion creates a temporary gap, threatening the advance. Yet German command adapts instantly, redirecting forces, covering weak points, and exploiting minor openings elsewhere. The moment of decision is upon them, the fine line between triumph and setback, hinging on split-second judgment and battlefield intuition. And here, the tide begins to shift subtly, yet irrevocably. The first tremors of change ripple through the front. Defenders exploit the slight hesitation, targeting isolated tanks and attempting to stall infantry advances. Mines, improvised roadblocks, and ambushes slow columns that had seemed unstoppable, but the Germans counter with rapid coordination. Artillery softens key points, Stukas dive to suppress resistance, and flanking units close in to encircle ambushes. In the chaos, a critical breakthrough occurs. Intelligence intercepts reveal an unprotected junction behind the defenders' central position, a vulnerability previously unseen. German commanders seize the moment. A rapid pivot redirects armor and infantry to exploit this weakness. "Every second counts. Move now," shouts a field officer, galvanizing the troops. The attack hits like lightning. Defenders, already stretched, cannot reposition quickly. Panic begins to creep into the lines. The battlefield shifts. Momentum, which had favored the attackers in the morning, begins to wobble under the sudden, concentrated pressure from both sides. What had been near absolute control is now contested. And in the center, where one misstep nearly cost a column, a decisive opportunity emerges, one that will determine the outcome of this clash. The pivot strikes with precision. Tanks surge through the revealed gap, supported by infantry racing along cleared streets and alleys. Engineers dismantle the remaining obstacles in minutes, while Stukas provide continuous suppression from above. Defenders attempt a desperate counter-artillery hammers advancing columns, machine guns rake streets, and mobile infantry harass flanks. Yet the German assault adapts instantly. Reserves are committed, obstacles neutralized, and momentum refocused on exploiting the exposed center. In the midst of battle, one historian would later describe the moment. It was not raw force but anticipation and rapid adaptation that defined the turning point, where hesitation could have been catastrophic, yet decisiveness proved decisive. By mid-morning, the center collapses. Defenders fall back to secondary positions, abandoning key intersections. The psychological effect is immediate. Units that had fought stubbornly for hours now question their cohesion, their communication, and their ability to resist. The battlefield is fluid, alive with uncertainty. One bold maneuver, an opportunistic pivot exploiting a fleeting weakness, has reshaped the fight. The lines are broken, but the battle is far from over. With the center exposed, German forces encircle the remaining defenders. Flanking units advance with calculated speed, sealing routes of retreat. The defenders attempt to regroup along the next ridge, artillery positioned to cover withdrawals and slow momentum. Here weather intervenes. A sudden drizzle slicks roads and tracks, slowing tanks, reducing visibility, and introducing new hazards. Commanders adjust instantly, rerouting vehicles, altering infantry advances, and compensating for misfires and delays. Yet the defenders' chance is fleeting. Their attacks, though coordinated, are piecemeal, arriving too late and in insufficient force to exploit weaknesses. A senior officer later reflects, "Their single opportunity was all they had. They could not move fast enough, and the enemy's coordination closed the door before it even opened." The encirclement tightens. Isolated pockets of resistance are engaged, suppressed, or bypassed entirely. Communication becomes fragmented among defenders, further diminishing morale. Every decision, every maneuver is magnified by the tempo of the conflict. A single miscalculation could lead to catastrophic loss, but decisive action ensures survival and continued advance. By late afternoon, German forces hold both the central pivot and the flanks, consolidating the turning point. The battlefield, once contested, now tilts unmistakably. The psychological impact is immediate. Defenders' command struggles to maintain control. Orders conflict, units hesitate, and communication gaps widen. Momentum, previously fluid, now bends toward the attackers. German troops, aware of the advantage, push with measured aggression. Tanks roll steadily, infantry secures villages and crossroads, engineers maintain routes, and air support continues precision strikes. Reserves reinforce areas of opportunity, preventing defenders from consolidating. Small victories compound, turning hesitation into full-scale retreat in key sectors. By evening, the battlefield reflects the turning point in every scar of earth and movement of troops. The speed, coordination, and adaptability that define Blitzkrieg are fully realized, leaving the defenders reactive rather than proactive. Strategically, the central pivot exploited intelligence, timing, and terrain to create a decisive shift. The battle has not ended, but the outcome is increasingly clear. The next day will see further pursuit and consolidation, and yet for both sides, the human cost exhaustion, uncertainty, and tension remains ever present. By nightfall, German forces consolidate around the central breakthrough. Observation posts scan for counterattacks, engineers repair bridges and roads, and infantry secures villages that could threaten flanks. Defenders retreat to secondary positions, exhausted and demoralized. Supplies are low, communication fragmented, and cohesion weakened. Artillery remains, but without infantry coordination, its effectiveness is limited. The battlefield tells the story. Scorched earth, disrupted lines, and silent stretches where skirmishes once raged. This turning point is decisive not due to overwhelming force alone, but because one bold pivot exploited a weakness, leveraged intelligence, and maintained momentum. A historian later notes, Blitzkrieg was not merely speed, it was the ability to see opportunity and act instantly, turning hesitation into victory. Tomorrow, consolidation will follow, and the battle's broader implications will unfold across the front. The stage is set for aftermath, strategic shifts, and reflection on the consequences of that single, pivotal moment. The turning point is complete. The central pivot, rapid adaptation, and coordinated flanking maneuvers have altered the battlefield's trajectory. Defenders are scattered, morale shaken, and territory gained. German forces consolidate, supply lines secured, and momentum now firmly in their hands. The stage is set for the next phase. Aftermath, consequences, and strategic reflection. Aftermath and consequences. As dawn breaks, both sides reckon with what was lost, what was gained, and how a single day reshaped the front entirely. Dawn breaks over a landscape transformed. Towns captured, crossroads seized, rivers crossed, and ridges dominated. The battlefield bears the imprint of relentless motion. German forces consolidate their gains, clearing remaining pockets of resistance, securing supply routes, and reorganizing for continued advance. For defenders, the consequences are stark. Command lines are fractured, communication delayed or severed, and units scattered across multiple towns and ridges. Artillery and weapons remain, but without cohesive coordination, their effectiveness is reduced. Losses are counted not only in material, but in morale and positioning. Entire sectors are now exposed. Roads and railways critical to defense have fallen under enemy control. The landscape itself tells a story of rapid, almost surgical shifts in control. Villages once held now bear the marks of battle, yet remain intact enough to support occupation and supply. Civilians emerge cautiously from homes, assessing the altered reality. Fear and uncertainty ripple across communities, yet life begins to adjust to the new front lines. In strategic terms, one decisive day has redrawn the map, altering options for both sides and setting the stage for further operations. Tomorrow, the consequences will reach deeper, beyond mere geography. The human cost is silent but present. Soldiers on both sides are weary, exhausted by continuous movement, long hours, and constant threat. Injuries, shortages, and fatigue strain units, while logistical teams struggle to keep supply lines functioning under the new territorial realities. Despite careful coordination, losses occur. Vehicles damaged, bridges destroyed, artillery out of action, and infantry casualties stretch medics and field hospitals to capacity. Yet the account remains neutral. Numbers are tallied, units accounted for, and strategies recalibrated. For civilians, the front lines dictate movement. Markets, farms, and transport routes are disrupted. Communities face scarcity and uncertainty. Yet occupation policies, local cooperation, and communication allow adaptation. Life continues under the shadow of battle, a quiet testament to endurance amidst upheaval. Strategically, the capture of towns, ridges, and river crossings secures critical supply routes. Command hubs now fall under new control, enabling further operations with reduced risk of disruption. The psychological impact of momentum cannot be overstated. The defenders must now operate reactively, while the attackers maintain initiative and choice in engagements. The consequences of a single day's action ripple far beyond the immediate battlefield. Territorial control has shifted decisively. Key towns now serve as hubs for supply and communications. Rivers once defended as natural barriers are crossed and secured, leaving defenders with fewer fallback positions. Roads and railways are open to movement, enabling rapid redeployment and resupply for German forces. Artillery emplacements, previously dominant, are either captured, destroyed, or rendered ineffective. Tactical flexibility increases dramatically for attackers, while defenders are forced to improvise, moving units to cover unexpected gaps. Morale and cohesion are affected. The rapid advance, relentless pressure, and unpredictability of attacks create uncertainty among remaining defenders. Conversely, German forces, despite fatigue, experience the psychological reinforcement of a successful operational tempo. Confidence in strategy and execution grows, reinforcing the effectiveness of rapid, coordinated assaults. The ripple effect is immediate. Neighboring sectors adjust positions, preparing for further engagement, while high command reevaluates priorities. Supply networks already strained must adapt to new realities. In this theater, consequences are not abstract. They manifest in territory, positioning, morale, and the psychological momentum that drives decisions on both sides. Equipment and material losses are significant but not catastrophic. Tanks damaged, artillery displaced, bridges destroyed, and transport vehicles immobilized. Engineers work tirelessly to restore infrastructure and maintain operational readiness. Casualties are documented neutrally. Infantry losses, wounded, and attrition numbers are calculated to inform strategic planning. The human toll, while not graphic, is profound fatigue, uncertainty, and emotional strain are universal across both sides. The battlefield's physical geography has been altered subtly. Streets scarred, hedgerows destroyed, bridges replaced or repaired, and villages bearing the marks of sustained combat. Each change contributes to the new tactical environment. Strategically, control of the river crossings, crossroads, and ridges creates an operational advantage that extends beyond immediate tactical gain. Supply routes, lines of communication, and command hubs now favor the advancing forces. Civilians, though spared from direct violence, face disruption. Travel is restricted, commerce slowed, and communities adjust to occupation or shifting control. The war's larger momentum is affected. One decisive day has produced cumulative effects that influence decisions, planning, and movement for weeks to come. In every sense, territorial, logistical, psychological, the battlefield has been reshaped. The aftermath is not simply a record of gain or loss, it is a recalibration of strategy. German commanders assess which positions must be reinforced, which roads must remain open, and where reserves can be positioned for subsequent operations. Defenders must consider where to consolidate, how to protect supply lines, and how to slow the advancing force without overextending themselves. Every decision carries amplified consequences. Morale is now a factor equal to artillery or armor. Units aware of the battlefield's velocity experience hesitation, while others find resilience in temporary defensive positions. The human factor blends with terrain and equipment. Exhaustion, uncertainty, and anticipation shape decision-making. Command hubs coordinate redeployment, assess losses, and plan contingencies. Logistics teams repair vehicles, reroute supplies, and ensure the front does not stall. The psychological imprint of the day's decisive pivot remains vivid. Defenders know momentum has shifted, while attackers recognize the power of rapid, coordinated operational action. Even as night falls, the consequences echo through orders, maps, and strategy boards. Tomorrow the front lines will adjust, plans will be revised, and both sides will prepare for the next phase of the campaign. Supply and communication dominate post-battle priorities. Roads must be cleared, bridges repaired, and rail lines reopened to maintain operational reach. Engineers and logistics teams work in tandem, ensuring mobility matches strategic objectives. For defenders, disrupted lines create uncertainty. Ammunition, reinforcements, and medical aid arrive slowly or inconsistently. Commanders must prioritize threats, redistribute units, and stabilize sectors with limited resources. For attackers, consolidation allows exploitation of the turning point. Captured towns, crossroads, and ridges provide staging areas for continued operations. Intelligence collected during the advance informs next moves, reinforcing the advantage gained by speed and coordination. Territorial shifts now create long-term strategic implications. Control of supply routes enables deeper penetration, while defensive options for opponents shrink. The human impact remains, quietly measured. Fatigue, uncertainty, and the stress of rapid maneuver permeate every unit. Civilians navigate disrupted infrastructure and adjust to occupation or new authorities. In sum, the day has reshaped the operational environment, not through singular destruction, but through coordinated, decisive action that alters geography, morale, and strategic potential. The stage is now set for reflection, analysis, and understanding how this turning point will shape the broader war. By nightfall, the battlefield is both calm and charged. German forces fortify captured positions, set up observation points, and maintain readiness for further engagement. Infantry rests, engineers repair, and artillery is repositioned to cover critical avenues. Defenders regroup where possible, attempting to consolidate scattered units and fortify remaining positions. Commanders analyze failures and successes, preparing for the inevitable next engagement. The consequences of a single decisive day are clear. Territory gained, lines shifted, momentum altered, and morale impacted. Strategic advantages now favor the attackers, while defenders are forced into reactive planning. Equipment losses, while significant, are mitigated by rapid repair and resource allocation. Human exhaustion is high, yet both sides prepare to continue the fight. Civilians, cautiously emerging, adjust to a transformed reality. Towns occupied, roads cleared, and front lines shifted. Their endurance mirrors the soldiers, a quiet testament to resilience. Tomorrow the battlefield will see further action, and the implications of these consequences will ripple far beyond the immediate front, influencing planning, supply, and strategy for both sides in ways only time will reveal. The aftermath of the battle is not measured solely in territory or equipment, but in strategic advantage, momentum, and morale. Defenders reassess, planners adjust, and the human cost is quietly profound. German forces consolidate, supply lines secured, and operational freedom enhanced. The battlefield has been reshaped. Reflection and analysis. Now we turn to the lessons, insights, and strategic wisdom hidden within the chaos, examining leadership, planning, and logistics that determined the outcome of this battle. The battlefield, now quiet in places yet still alive with activity, offers more than mere terrain. It reveals lessons. Blitzkrieg was not simply speed, it was the orchestration of multiple elements in harmony, a testament to planning, coordination, and decisive execution. Commanders who anticipated enemy movements, calculated risks, and leveraged intelligence turned theoretical tactics into tangible advantage. Leadership emerged not from brute force alone, but from adaptability and rapid decision-making under pressure. Observers note the significance of initiative. Units that acted with precision and speed gained psychological and operational advantage. The interplay of armor, infantry, engineers, and air support demonstrates that tactical success requires more than raw numbers. It demands cohesion, timing, and situational awareness. In reflection, the day's events illustrate a crucial truth: the ability to maintain momentum, adjust to unforeseen obstacles, and exploit fleeting weaknesses determines outcomes as much as weapons or terrain. For modern strategists and historians alike, this battle is a study in anticipation, adaptability, and the management of operational tempo. And yet, the lessons are not abstract. They are visible in every movement, decision, and adjustment made during the conflict. Leadership under pressure proved decisive. Commanders who maintained clarity amid chaos ensured coordinated maneuvers across diverse units. Communication, often overlooked, became a lifeline. Radio messages, field signals, and rapid delegation allowed flexible responses to unexpected challenges. The contrast between proactive and reactive forces is stark. Attackers maintained initiative. Defenders, even when well-equipped, were forced into reactive patterns, responding to momentum rather than shaping it. Logistics underpinned every success. Tanks require fuel, artillery ammunition must arrive precisely, and infantry sustenance is essential for continuous movement. Engineers bridged rivers, cleared roads, and repaired infrastructure, often under enemy observation. Without these coordinated efforts, speed and coordination would collapse. Technology amplified effectiveness. Tanks, armored vehicles, and dive bombers executed maneuvers impossible without precise support. Yet technology alone was insufficient. Human judgment, adaptation, and timing were the true force multipliers. Historians have noted, Blitzkrieg succeeded not because of the weapons themselves, but because every element, man, machine, and plan worked in synchrony under pressure. Every successful engagement underscores that strategy is a living, adaptive process, continuous, flexible, and responsive to changing realities on the ground. The psychological dimension of conflict is often overlooked. Speed, coordination, and unexpected maneuvers disrupted defenders' cohesion, forcing them to react hastily. This created hesitation, uncertainty, and diminished morale, a force multiplier invisible yet potent. The attack's tempo compressed decision-making cycles, leaving little room for deliberation. For defenders, every pause risked encirclement, every hesitation compounded disadvantage. Conversely, disciplined units experienced reinforcement from success. Each rapid advance, each captured position, reinforced confidence, streamlined command, and maintained operational rhythm. Momentum became both weapon and shield. Leadership is measured not only by tactical decisions, but by the ability to anticipate consequences. Adjusting to terrain, weather, and enemy behavior without delay is the mark of operational mastery. The integration of intelligence into planning was decisive. Observing weak points, predicting responses, and directing concentrated action allowed small maneuvers to yield large strategic effects. From the perspective of strategy, this battle is a study in leveraging coordination, tempo, and foresight to achieve disproportionate results with finite resources. The battlefield becomes a living classroom. Every action teaches, every error highlights vulnerability, and every success validates adaptability. Planning extended beyond immediate objectives. Operational foresight involved anticipating obstacles, preparing contingencies, and ensuring units could adapt without losing cohesion. Flexibility was embedded into command structures. Officers empowered subordinates to make rapid decisions within a framework of overall strategy. This decentralization enabled units to respond instantly to evolving conditions, mitigating disruption from terrain, weather, or enemy action. Logistical foresight proved essential. Fuel depots, supply routes, and forward repair teams ensured that momentum could continue even as distances lengthened and obstacles multiplied. A halt in supply would have nullified tactical advantage. Careful coordination prevented that vulnerability. Technological integration magnified these advantages. Tanks, infantry, and air support operated in synchrony. Engineers bridged rivers, cleared obstacles, and maintained mobility, allowing speed and initiative to remain uninterrupted. Yet no tool or unit alone was decisive. Victory relied on the symphony of movement, human judgment, discipline, adaptation, and technology combined in continuous, dynamic harmony. Strategically, this demonstrates a fundamental principle. Operational tempo and integration often outweigh numerical superiority, forcing the opponent into reactive patterns while maintaining initiative. Blitzkrieg, in essence, was a lesson in managing complexity under pressure, where every choice rippled across terrain, time, and human capacity. Adaptation under fire was constant. When defenders used natural terrain, improvised defenses, or concentrated firepower, German units pivoted, flanked, or bypassed resistance. This continual adjustment prevented the front from stalling and reinforced operational dominance. Decision-making at multiple levels proved critical. Field officers exercised judgment to exploit weaknesses, while high command coordinated larger movements, balancing risk and opportunity. The battle also highlights the importance of intelligence. Reconnaissance identified gaps, predicted counterattacks, and allowed rapid concentration of forces. Information flow was as crucial as firepower itself. The human dimension remained central. Fatigue, morale, and communication determined effectiveness. Units capable of sustained focus and rapid response outperformed larger but disorganized forces. Lessons extend beyond historical context. Leadership, logistics, communication, and adaptability combined with disciplined execution remain relevant for modern strategic and operational planning. Every engagement, every maneuver reinforces the interplay between human decision-making and technological capability. The battlefield becomes a laboratory for understanding complexity, coordination, and the consequences of split-second choices under pressure. History, when analyzed in this manner, offers timeless insight into the orchestration of movement, force, and foresight. Technology, though impactful, functioned only within a framework of coordination. Tanks, aircraft, and artillery magnified human decisions. They did not replace them. Successful integration relied on disciplined crews, responsive command, and clear objectives. Tempo dictated success. Rapid decision cycles, coordinated strikes, and continuous pressure prevented defenders from stabilizing, allowing smaller, focused units to achieve disproportionate results. The operational art was evident. Flexibility, anticipation, and exploitation of weakness combined to create a cascade effect. Each advance reshaped the battlefield, compelling defenders to react rather than act. From a strategic perspective, the battle demonstrates that initiative, mobility, and integration are more decisive than raw numbers. Units acting in synchrony achieve more than scattered reactive forces, regardless of size. Psychologically, the momentum produced fear, uncertainty, and hesitation among defenders, amplifying the effect of every tactical success. Morale, as much as material, determined outcomes. Historians note that Blitzkrieg's lessons extend far beyond any single engagement. Coordination, speed, and adaptive leadership remain cornerstones of operational effectiveness. Every tactical choice, every logistical adjustment, every calculated risk reveals the complex interplay of human judgment, technology, and terrain in shaping battle outcomes. The battlefield, once a site of chaos, emerges as a study in orchestration, decisiveness, and the enduring principles of warfare. In reflection, this battle offers insight into the mechanics of Blitzkrieg. Tempo, coordination, intelligence, and leadership converge to produce decisive outcomes. Equipment and manpower are amplified when integrated into a coherent operational rhythm. The lessons are timeless: anticipate, adapt, and maintain initiative. Epic closing. Next, we return to the opening question, synthesizing the story, the impact, and the lessons learned, and prepare to witness the cinematic conclusion. As the sun sets over scarred towns, ridges, and river crossings, we return to the question that opened this story. What makes a lightning war truly devastating? Blitzkrieg is more than tactics. It is a force that moves as if alive, combining speed, coordination, and psychological pressure to overwhelm opposition before they can respond. From the initial thrust to the pivotal turning point, every maneuver, every calculated risk, and every adaptation has shaped a battlefield where momentum itself becomes a weapon. The landscape tells the story. Roads cleared, crossroads captured, ridges controlled, towns secured and defenders forced to react under relentless pressure. Yet the human dimension remains central. Exhaustion, anticipation, morale and courage dictate outcomes as much as technology or artillery. History's lessons emerge clearly: leadership, planning, logistics, and the integration of man and machine define operational success. We have witnessed not only the mechanics of Blitzkrieg, but also its enduring principles: initiative, tempo, and adaptation. The war moves forward, and the battlefield continues to evolve, leaving both opportunity and peril in its wake. For the soldiers, the day concludes not with finality, but with preparation for tomorrow. Units consolidate, commanders reassess, and engineers repair the arteries of movement. For the defenders, the lessons are immediate. Momentum can overwhelm even the best defenses. Coordination is as crucial as firepower, and hesitation can turn opportunity into catastrophe. From aerial reconnaissance to armored spearheads, from communication networks to human decision-making, every element of the battle has been a lesson in orchestration under pressure. The psychological imprint of speed and surprise continues to shape action and reaction. Momentum breeds confidence for some, uncertainty for others. And yet, this story is more than victory or defeat. It is about understanding complexity, consequences, and the interplay between preparation, execution, and human judgment. We have traced the arc from opening strike to decisive turning point, from aftermath to reflective insight, culminating in lessons that transcend the immediate conflict. As viewers, you have traveled across time and terrain, witnessing the velocity of war as it unfolds in real, tangible terms. The roar of engines, the precision of coordination, and the subtle art of adaptation reveal why Blitzkrieg changed the nature of modern combat. Speed without coordination falters, force without flexibility fails, initiative without insight falters. But when these elements align, the battlefield transforms, and decisions ripple outward, magnifying consequence. The human story endures. Commanders weighing risk, soldiers executing maneuvers under pressure, and civilians adjusting to upheaval. Every movement, every choice, every calculated risk contributes to a narrative far larger than any individual or unit. Blitzkrieg is more than a military term. It is a demonstration of principle, a study in orchestration, and a lesson in decisive action. As we close this chapter, the echoes of these battles remain lessons in planning, leadership, and the relentless pursuit of opportunity. Thank you, history warriors, for journeying through the speed, strategy, and human dimension of Blitzkrieg. If this story has captivated you, inspired curiosity, or offered a deeper understanding of historical strategy, show your support. Like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts on the turning points, tactics, and lessons that resonated most. History is alive, unfolding through the lens of analysis and reflection, and your engagement ensures these stories continue to reach others who seek to understand the forces that shaped the modern world. Next time, Island Hopping, the Pacific Campaign. You won't believe what happened there. The lessons from Blitzkrieg initiative, tempo, coordination will echo in that story as well, highlighting how different theaters demanded similar mastery of planning, adaptation, and decisive action. Until then, remember that history is not only what happened, but what we learn from it. How strategy, leadership, and human judgment intersect to shape the world. This concludes our journey through the Lightning War, leaving behind insights, reflections, and a renewed appreciation for the orchestration of war.